Hello, welcome to the second episode of Entrepreneur, a series where we share our thoughts and help entrepreneurs achieve their dreams. Hi, I'm Wing Leong.
I'm Jason.
Hi there, I'm Jackson.
Today we'll be talking about Incorporation, IRAS, compliance timeline, common mistakes and misconceptions that our clients often face. So, how do we get started? Incorporation is usually the first step. Please explain, what is incorporation?
So incorporation basically, right, it's giving birth to an legal entity. So in Singapore, right, ACRA or Accounting and Corporate Regulatory Authority is actually the body that is tasked with the formation and also the administration of businesses in Singapore. So usually for the incorporation, there are a couple of key steps to follow, or a couple of key items that we need to take note of. So one thing is company name. What is the desired company name that you want? Secondly, will be the shareholdings of the capital structure of the company. You got to decide during incorporation stage, right? What is who are the shareholders of the company, and also what is the capital that you put into the company to run the company. The next will be the registered address. Registered address is basically an address that all the correspondence and all the communication of the company will be addressed to, and typically, right, that will be I would say a commercial address. Okay. Lastly, will be your financial year end. You got to decide, what is the financial year end of the entity to make your accounts up to, and also you got to appoint during incorporation the officers of the company. Officers meaning the directors and secretary of the company. So directors will be the one that will be appointed to run the company's affair, and then you will have secretary that will be the one that's assisting the directors to manage the company's affair. And then after the incorporation is done, right, you actually get a business profile or BizFile for short from ACRA. So what is actually the BizFile? The BizFile will contains all the corporate information about the company that you just incorporated, and it's usually used for things like, let's say, bank account opening, for, let's say, rental lease agreement signing, and also for some of the clients who actually need to be on their customers approved vendor list. Usually the BizFile will be one of the records that is required, and usually for BizFile, right, most of the BizFile will need to be at least about three months and not earlier than 3 months for it to be useful.
So one of the big thing about starting a company is that the taxes are treated very differently from individual. What about corporate tax?
Right, so you actually go to the taxman in Singapore to these issues, right? So IRAS, in short, Inland Revenue Authority of Singapore. So they are the main government body that actually administers our overall tax regime in Singapore for individuals as well as for businesses as well. So the common kind of taxes that businesses are more liable for, we have corporate taxes, we have GST, goods and service tax. We also have stamp duties, withholding taxes, and of course for the business owners, individuals, shareholders and directors, personal taxes might be liable as well. And that all goes under the regional IRAS.
So during the COVID period, the government came out with a lot of grants, including JGI or JSS. How is this related to IRAS?
Right. So although the JGI, which is a Job Growth Initiative, as well as the JSS, the Job Support Scheme, although they were announced by the Ministry of Finance, they were eventually administered by IRAS, which was meant to help affected industries, businesses to actually tide through the difficult times of COVID. So IRAS was actually the main body that was administering and probably providing that relief through cash via PayNow to the company's bank accounts.
So what happens after a company has been incorporated? Is there any specific compliance that we need to follow?
So a company typically needs to report to two government bodies in a given year. Number one, that is to ACRA. That is to make sure that you actually report that the status of the company, whether is it still active or whether is it going to be dormant. You also want to update ACRA on whether is there any changes in the company's year end, any changes in the business activities of the company. Is there any changes to your office holders, directors, or even the secretary? And number two, the company also has to report to IRAS for the income taxes. Oh, so let's start with so sorry. So let's start with the easier topic. AGM.
Huh? What's AGM?
So AGM It means annual general meeting. Okay, in short, the annual general meeting is meant for office holder of the companies like the directors to actually report the status of the business over the past financial year to the owners, which are the shareholders of the company. So what are the topics that are covered in the AGM? Typically, number one, reappointment of any directors and also to approve any directors' fees to be given to them. Number two, approving the company's financial statements. Number three, is there going to be any declaration of dividends to the owners? Sometimes you also have topics like, is there any appointment of auditors wherever applicable?
Is there any specific timeline that a company need to follow when doing all this compliance work?
So I guess the timeline to really understand, right, will be the financial year end of the company. So financial year end, when the company's financial accounts got to be made out to. And then the next one will be the ECI, which is 3 months after the financial year end. So ECI stands for Estimated Chargeable Income. That's when you file the estimated tax to be payable to IRAS, followed by the AGM, which Jason just elaborated. For the shareholders to actually convene a meeting to discuss the company's affairs. The next one will be the annual return, the AR, which is actually to be filed 7 months after the company's financial year end, followed by the final tax form, which we call the Form C or the Form CS, depending on the requirement. So this is usually filed 1 year after the year end of the company.
Wow, that sounds very confusing. Can you give some example of how this looks like?
Sure. So maybe let's use a company which financial year end is 30th June 2022. Okay, you have the ECI that will be due 30th September 2022, followed by the AGM that will be 31st December 2022. The annual return to ACRA will be 31st January 2023, and then the final Form CS will be 30th November 2023.
That's very interesting. So what happens if a company fails to do any of its annual return filing?
So failure to lodge the annual return with ACRA will result in several consequences. So number one, there will be a late lodgement fee that ACRA will impose. That will usually range between $300 to $600 depending on the affairs of the company. Number two, ACRA can even compose a fine on the company. Number three, in worst case, ACRA can even order that the company to be struck off from the register. Right, and for the directors, what is at risk for the directors, and this is something that we always think is very important. Any directors who are involved with filing-related offences 3 times in a period of 5 years, there is a risk that this director will be disqualified by ACRA to hold director appointment going forward in Singapore company.
That sounds very serious. How about tax filing? What if someone fails to file his taxes?
So when the company fails to do its tax filing on time, number one, IRAS can actually send a notice of assessment that is based on last year's income tax or profit numbers, so that the company pay on the last year's taxes. This is estimated by IRAS. Number two, IRAS can of course always compound a fine on the company that is usually up to $5,000 in a given year. Number three, by Section 65B 3 of the Income Tax Act, IRAS can also require the directors to actually submit related documents. By saying documents, we can also mean to really submit the Form CS to IRAS. And in the worst case, of course, IRAS can also summon the office holders and members of the companies to court to explain its actions.
We have covered quite a lot of grounds today. We have talked about incorporation, corporate tax filing, compliance timeline, and penalties for non-compliance. We hope that this has been helpful to our viewers. If you enjoyed this episode, like the video and share it with your friend.
Subscribe to our channel so you'll be the first to know when new contents are out.
Comment below and let us know what you think. Okay, that's all for today.
See you guys next time. Bye.